welcome back to Switch to Linux. So today we want to do just kind of a little bit of a thing for maybe some newbies, maybe just, introduce you to some other different suites out there. I want to talk today about how to pick an office suite for your Linux system. And I get a lot of different requests, and I will look into pretty much nearly every one of them that I can a little bit. Can't always make any promises, but somebody last week or 2 weeks ago or something left me a note, can I look at SoftMaker and see what that would look like? And so actually I intended to do that, but then after digging into it a little bit, I kind of decided that I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to talk about why. But then I thought about, how can I move into this a little bit further? And I say, well, how do we pick an office suite for a Linux system? So that's kind of what we're going to jump in here to today. So here is their main website at SoftMaker, and probably it's a decent company. I just don't know. But here's the reality, is that Linux has a lot of amazingly fabulous, completely free and open source Office applications that do everything I need it to do and everything most people need it to do, outside of one or two super higher level up people that have weird applications that Libreoffice doesn't include. I use Libreoffice, and I can do everything on Libreoffice. I can do all my spreadsheets. I can do all my PowerPoint type presentation, my presentations. I can do writing. In fact, I've written entire books on Libreoffice entirely, written and produced, so that, getting them completely ready for typesetting. There's no reason for us to look a whole lot further. And, this is one of those things that, what is one of the major, complaints and or criticisms is people say, well, the Office documents don't work well on, going from LibreOffice to Microsoft Office, for example. And the reality is, yes, they do. Oftentimes, it's your fonts you've picked. That's what the problem generally is if you're talking about not having compatibility back and forth. Because the defaults on LibreOffice are free and open source fonts, and those fonts are not installed on a typical Windows machine. And so what you need to do is run, utilize, and set defaults on fonts that are fonts on a Windows machine, and you have the ability in Linux to install the Windows fonts on it. So you have to keep those items in mind. So if you are sharing documents back and forth with people on Windows users, just tweak up your LibreOffice to default save in a file format they're expecting, and use the fonts that they're expecting. But I want to go through, and I just kind of pulled up an article about 16 most used Office replacements for Linux, and I pulled that article up just to give me just a talking framework. But before that, I'm going to talk about why I'm not actually going to try out SoftMaker, because I had actually intended to. So, of course, you come here, and SoftMaker, it's basically a Microsoft Office. This is from a German company. They have the SoftMaker Office for Windows, Linux, Android. There's an HD, and there is I guess a free version for Android. There's Thunderbird. I'm guessing some type of interfacing. I'm not sure exactly what all that was. And of course, it is a paid program. So you buy it, and you can buy the Office Professional, license 5 computers for the same household, or 1 computer of a company for $70. And then there's 89 for 3 different seats. So, and I haven't dug into all of these. The pricing seems somewhat comparable to those of Microsoft Office, although I haven't looked into those for a long time. So you can see there's upgrades. Here's full versions. I'm not sure which is the difference necessarily between, I guess this is the upgrade, this is the full version. So it's about the same price, actually, as Microsoft Office. Now they do have, here's the Linux version. Again, the thing is this is a closed source application that you pay for that is supposed to have similar functionality to Office. The reality is, go through LibreOffice and configure it. And if I get enough requests, maybe I'll show you exactly how to do that. But I wanted to come up here, and if you go into their main site, there is a downloads tab here, and there are trial versions. And this is actually the reason why I was not going to try it. Come down here, your free to beta version. Guess what? You got to give them your name. You got to give them your country. You got to give them your email. If you don't have give them an email. I don't know. Let's see if we can actually choose a non-valid email. Not that I'm going to necessarily install it anyway. But this is that type of stuff I generally don't care for. If I want to try out an evaluation service, I don't want to give them my real information. I got sick of doing that right around the time. Let's see. You are now registered for the beta version. Your product key has been emailed. So I cannot even test this without giving them a real, legitimate email address. And you know what? In this day and age, the last thing I possibly want to do is give some company my email address. And I'm certainly not going to do that for a free sample of a product that I'm just not sure I want to use or not. And that's why I'm not using it. Of course, here we can download this. I'm sure if I download this and install it, I can't activate it without that product key that they have emailed to my address that isn't a real address. And so I apologize to the gentleman who sent me this. I don't know if you're affiliated with the company or not. I'm not testing this out because I'm not giving this company my email address. I'm not going to risk it. I'm not going to risk that they're not going to sell it. I'm not going to risk whatever else. I'm not going to risk a hack, and I'm not going to risk being annoyed till the end of the world over some Office application that would simply replace Libreoffice, and Libreoffice does absolutely everything I need it to do. And so with that, let's go ahead and have a look at this. This comes from techmint.com, and it's 16 most used Microsoft Office alternatives for Linux. I don't know anything about this periodical or whatever, but basically it gave me a list of Office links. I thought it was on page 1, but apparently I was not on page 1. Oh, come on, give me first. They really need to work on their navigation structure. All right. So, of course, number 1 listed here is LibreOffice. This is what I use across every system. It works on nearly every Linux distro, and I even have a collab office. It's called Code. I think it's Collabora or Collabora, whatever, Collabora. Basically a online version of this going for integration with my Nextcloud. So I have all of that. I've not fully tested if I can do absolutely everything on the online version versus the offline version, but regardless, it is definitely enough that I am now collaborating on some writing projects with people, and all I need to do is give them their own login into my Nextcloud system, and guess what? We can now collaborate, share documents, we can share apps, we can share pictures, we can share lots of stuff. LibreOffice does everything you need it to do. You can save it in doc, you can save it as a docx, you can save it in all of the formats that Microsoft Office is going to look for. And like I said, most people who complain that you do something in LibreOffice and doesn't open in Microsoft Office, right? The reason is probably your fonts. That's probably it. It's simply probably your fonts. Make sure you're using Microsoft Office safe fonts, and you will not have any problems. And especially if you're trading back and forth and you need that compatibility, make sure that you are opening and saving the documents in the Microsoft Office format. It works just fine. And I've not had any problem opening documents I wrote 20 years ago in LibreOffice, no problems at all. So LibreOffice is obviously the number 1. There may be some reasons you don't want to go with it. It might be overkill for some people because this will do everything Office will do. From doing spreadsheets to doing calculations, and they even have a databasing functionality. They have the drawing tools. They have math formulas. So, it does everything Office, an Office suite should do. OpenOffice is... I think that this is no longer under active production. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I am pretty sure this is not any longer under active production. And so, but it is something I have this installed on my Windows writing computer. I should actually replace it with LibreOffice. I actually switched over to Microsoft Office on that particular computer just because I was working with a particular publisher that had to have Microsoft Office documents. Now that I do my own self-publishing, I I can choose the formats I use. So I use LibreOffice. But OpenOffice is an option. The Calligra suites, and a lot of these, by the way, I don't know a ton about a lot of these, just because Libre does the task. But this one here is another full open source suite. This is one I've usually seen this on desktops that, you know, a little bit lighter weight are some of the things. I'm not sure why exactly that is. Like I said, I haven't really used it, but as you are picking an Office suite for your Linux distro, ask yourself the things that you need and then research each one of these. And I would definitely just go with an open source one. This is a good open source one. So it contains the word processor, the spreadsheets, presentations, Calligra Author used to make EPUBs. Krita is actually involved in this. There's the flowchart designer. So what you see is a large variety of Office suites, kind of like you see with several other ones. In fact, I believe the next is WPS. I generally have fallen out of favor of WPS simply because I read their terms and conditions at one point in time. This is a closed source system. They offer it kind of like as a freeware type version. Eventually, you may need to pay for it. But this Office suite here is, it's one that I'm not quite a huge fan of these days. I think it actually is still on some of my systems, although they're not on systems I actually actively use. And I did some experimenting with it, and I really wasn't all that fond of this system. Mostly because it's proprietary, and I read the terms and conditions once. GNOME Office. This is the one I thought was next. So GNOME Office contains your Abbey Word, your Numeric for spreadsheets, Ease presentations. I've not used Ease. I have Numeric on one of my systems that gets used for some things. It's okay. I still like LibreOffice better for the spreadsheets. Inkscape is included in that. GNU Cache is included in that. I do use GNU Cache for managing one of my businesses. Evolution is involved in that, which I use on all my Linux system emails. Let's see, PDF viewers, label makers. So you see the GNOME Office has a whole lot of various suites. This image here does look a little bit more dated. It does, and I'm not sure if you can change the theming on these ones or not. I imagine you probably can. SoftMaker Office, of course, this is on the list. Once again, it's closed source. I'm simply not going to try it out because I'm not giving them a valid email address to try out a system to replace an Office suite that's free and open source and without license, that I can use it on any of my systems and does everything that even an author needs for complete publication. The other ones here on the list, I don't recall ever seeing any of these. So Oxygen Office, Yozo Office, some of these are kind of smaller things. We do have Google Docs on the list. This might be adequate for some people if you do use Google services, and why not? You know, I don't personally use the Google services, but this might be exactly what you need. If you are using these services, though, please, please, please download copies of your Office suites. You know, download copies of your files. Keep an active copy of them and keep them on a disk. Do not rely on Google's cloud to do that. Some distros even have links already set up for this. I think Peppermint might by default. They have an ICE application that will load up these various applications. So of course Google Docs, and I didn't see it on this, but Microsoft has the same thing going now as well. Of course, also not on this list that you should definitely look into if you have the technical experience and available server space is do a Calibora so you can have LibreOffice in the cloud. That's a little bit better option. And I will be doing a video on that eventually. It's just a little bit more complicated, and I got to set my stage and have the time to actually work on that. Zoho Docs, I'm not familiar with Zoho Docs. Joe Office. So like I said, the rest of these I have either never heard of or have very little experience with. Okay, there's Office 365. So they did include it on the list. I'd figure it'd be a little higher on the list, but you know, this is essentially what most Windows computers are getting these days. It is an Office in the cloud, so this will work on a Linux type system. Again, I'm not a huge fan of using Microsoft, and I don't use cloud services anywhere I don't have to, and I always look for my own solutions first. However, if you are coming to Linux, realize that you don't need to try and get your Microsoft Office suite working through Wine. I wouldn't bother. There are too many other applications that are good. There are these free or paid ones, the paid ones like the SoftMaker. If you are definitely looking for something that should work really, really well, might be worth looking into that. If you don't have any quibbles about giving them the email address for a trial, it might be worth that. I did notice that you download a deb package or an RPM package, and so some people may or may not, like elementary here, that wouldn't install that very easily. So keep that in mind. But if you are new to Linux or you're considering switching over to Linux, understand that there are a lot of Office suites and they do all of the same things that we can do on the Windows applications as far as Office suites are concerned. I have noticed a few little odd things like password protected spreadsheets. A password protected spreadsheets don't communicate well between both systems. That's pretty much the only issue that I've had, and how I've actually solved that in the past is if I have it on Windows computer and I need that, I'll simply take off the password protection, pass over to Linux, and then recreate the password protection on the Linux system. That seems to be what works. Everything else I've noted pretty much works about the same. Libreoffice, for some reason, is not saving when I have centered a column in my budget spreadsheet. That might because it's an old, out-of-date version. That might be resolved at this point. But other than a few tiny little minor things like that, LibreOffice should do anything that you need. If you need to move beyond that, look at the suites and the GNOME Office packages. Look for the Calligra Office packages. I'd say if you're, unless you have some very, very niche needs, one of those three suites are free open source applications. I'd encourage you to support those individual projects. But the reality is we don't need these extra software packages coming up. There's just not really a need for them. Just learn how to make your Office packages compatible with the Microsoft Office compatible packages, and eventually I'll maybe do a video about how to do that. So thanks for watching this quick video here on picking a Office suite for Linux. Like I said, there are a lot of options out there. There's even more than I covered here. But I personally, as an author, I use LibreOffice. I can write my manuscripts, I can combine them, I can produce the book, and the manuscripts that I've done, I've had no problem submitting to any publisher for publication. They work just fine. All you need to do is follow the specifications on the guide. The great thing about the LibreOffice is you can export it directly as the PDF that you need to submit to the publisher. That's the things you're looking for. There might be a few other small niche things back and forth, but on those individual items, look into those, do a little bit of research. If you have to pick up an extra Office suite, you can look into it then, but take a little bit of time and see if you can get it working on, one of the three big open source Linux ones, because they're really big for a very good reason. And that very good reason is that they very well work and they are very functional in what they do. So thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to help support what we're doing, check out switchtolinux.com/support. And you can learn about all the ways you can help support us. We have Patreon, patreon.com/TomM. And we also have Amazon links down below, and there is also a PayPal link on there if you just want to submit a small tip through PayPal. Those are all acceptable ways. I have a couple other channels as well. You can look at the main channel page for Switch to Linux to see those other channels and see the niche areas that I talk about on those. So thanks for watching, and hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.